It is Thursday night. It is 8 p.m. And you know what that means, folks. It is time for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. And we have so much to discuss because this weekend is going to be supersized in a lot of ways. You got WWE, you got AEW, you got NXT all over the world. Multiple shows happening this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So without further ado, let's get to it. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now. Hello, everybody. How's it going? We got a lot of wrestling happening, so your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast is here to break it all down because it is a packed weekend of action. We are glad you're here with us tonight. It's your guy, Will, here with Damian G up across from me at the top of the screen, and the giant Grab Jamal down below. The three men bringing you all the dirt and analysis of what is going to happen this weekend because there is a lot. It's been a while since we've had one of these like multiple shows to the point of three. There's that extra NXT part getting thrown in there. It's not just WWE and AEW. It's like all the brands are getting involved here, and plus the worldwide aspect with it being a Saudi show weekend too. So there's a lot happening, guys. How is it going for y'all this week?
To be honest with you, has the Saudi show started yet?
Let's see. We are SmackDown tomorrow night will not be live. It has already been taped, and I know some people are already there, as we will be discussing. So there's definitely festivities happening over there, and people are definitely on the ground over there. But Saturday afternoon, our time, is when the Saudi show, Night of Champions, will kick off, from what I'm hearing.
I see.
This has been one of those long, sorry, Jamal, this has been one of those kind of, oh, wow, this is happening this weekend wrestling situations where before pre-show, I kind of forgot about Blood Money and realized, oh, wait, that's happening on Saturday too. So can't wait. I literally will be on Saturday watching a lot of wrestling. So hooray.
Yeah, we're going to need more hours in the weekend. We need like 100-hour weekend to get everything in play.
It works out that here in the States, Monday is a holiday with Memorial Day, since there won't be any wrestling on Monday as far as during the daytime or any big shows. So Saturday and Sunday will be jam-packed, though, since we got Night of Champions on Saturday, and then Sunday night we have the double whammy of AEW Double Nothing and NXT Battleground, which are going head-to-head. So we're going to touch on all of those tonight as we work through the show. So starting at the beginning, we might as well do it in order. Saturday, the latest Saudi event, the latest Blood Money event, however you want to put it, WWE Night of Champions, of course, capped off by where they will be crowning their new world heavyweight champion with the new branded title, a finale between AJ Styles and Seth Rollins. But on this show, you know how we are. We do not like to run down cards. We do not like to do the whole, like, speak about every match thing that every other podcast or show in the world does. We like to focus in on what has our attention. So, starting with Night of Champions, our Saudi show on Saturday, the question is, what has your attention? So, Jamal, I'm going to go to you first. What is caught your eye on WWE's big show over the weekend?
7 matches on the card. I think the biggest thing, aside from the biggest non-match, but the biggest aspect of the show is the fact that they have 2 women's matches. I think that's pretty interesting for them to have that. Rhea Ripley and Natalya, and Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus. I think that's like, I would be interested to see where the placement of those matches are on the card. Will they be a come down match after a big, highly anticipated match, or will they save Becky versus Trish towards the end? Rhea versus Natalya is a women's match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Will that come later in the card? So it's interesting to see how those two play out. But as far as the match goes, the biggest match I want to see is Gunther versus Mustafa Ali.
Yes.
I think I've always liked, the David versus Goliath, type of match. And Gunther's doing his best work in WWE right now. Mustafa Ali is oh damn, I'm looking right at it and I'm blind. Yeah, I forgot about Bianca Belair versus Asuka. So that's like half the card, a little less than half the card is our women's matches, but it's still, so that's going to be very interesting to see how those 3 matches play out. But Gunther versus Mustafa Ali, it's for the Intercontinental Championship. It'll be interesting to see how the crowd plays to Ali. It'll be interesting to see how Gunther goes over in Saudi, and it'll be interesting to see where that match is in the card as well. So and I'll give the WWE credit, they produce a lot of flash and a lot of sizzle, but no like real substance. But every match on this card is a noteworthy match. This is a pay-per-view event. This is not something where there are no bathroom breaks on this card.
Yeah, there's no filler. This is all killer, no filler. If that's how you want to put it for one of these overseas shows.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Didn't occur to me after saying that, but it is what it is. Damian, what's jumping out at you?
So I'm going to avoid the World Heavyweight Championship because, we've talked about that on this show. I'm actually intrigued to Jamal's point about the women's matches. Not only the fact that we have 3, but if we remember correctly, a few years back, women couldn't even be on the show. So,
yes.
Or they were wearing the trash bags. So I'm impressed that we have 3. What I'm looking forward to is Bianca versus Asuka, and here's why. This would be the perfect time to dethrone Bianca in Saudi Arabia, because in America, that might be an issue because she's so over in America versus Asuka, who has international appeal from her former days as Kana in the world of Japanese wrestling. And you just turned her heel, maybe 2 weeks prior to WrestleMania? So you didn't pull the trigger then. I'm really interested to see if they pull the trigger now, also because there's a lot of rumors and murmurings that Bianca's growing kind of stale and getting almost the die Rocky die reception from some people. She's getting more boos than I'm used to hearing on WWE programming.
We saw that in Puerto Rico. So she got a very different reaction in Puerto Rico. I don't know if that carries over to the other side of the world, but you never know.
And if we remember her NXT run, she was a heel. She wasn't the smiling, motivational baby face. She was the it girl, the EST, you can't sit on my table. So I'm actually curious to see if WWE does pull a title change just because it's overseas and they wouldn't be brave enough to do it here in the States. But that's the one I'm looking most forward to.
Interesting. Yet I think I definitely agree on the point that the women's matches, their placement on the show, how much time they get, how they're handled, that's all going to be really interesting. And yeah, between Becky and Trish, Rhea and Natalya, Bianca and Asuka, they could conceivably do like regular match, men's match, women's match. They can alternate or something up till you get to the top of the card with your really big matches. They are advertising this as a triple main event. This show between the Seth and AJ match, Cody and Brock Lesnar, and then the tag team championship match, which for me, that's the match that has my attention. Okay. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn against the Bloodline, with the interesting twist that this isn't the Usos. It's Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. And on top of that, it's Roman Reigns on day 1,000 of his title reign. This will be day 1,000 on the Saudi show. So he's not in a title defense, but he is going after the tag team titles. But let's not skip over the first part of that because there is some newsworthy stuff here. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are on a Saudi show. We were talking about this before we went on the air, so I know Jamal has some thoughts on this. This is quite a big deal because for the longest time, darn well, if they were doing one of these shows, they weren't going to be there. And as of today, we know for sure that they have made the trip. Sammy made some social media posts today from over there. So they are definitely there. There's not an angle incoming on SmackDown or something where they're going to get injured and don't make the trip. This is really happening. They are there. So Jamal, weigh in here. You were bringing up some interesting points before the show about how this is quite the change in the landscape for how things have been happening with those two.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, that before all of this, before WrestleMania, we were talking about where Sami Zayn fit into the picture, where he fits into the Cody, Roman, and now Sammy and Kevin Owens, situation. And of course, we kind of, whether it is an actual issue or not, but it was, and the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is Mohammed bin Salman, looking at Sami Zayn, who's of Syrian ethnicity. And that's going to be, for political reasons, a problem. So there is no way that Sammy at that time, and what a difference a few months make, would be able to carry the title as world champion, which we were debating whether or not he should, because he was so over at the time, and hindsight being what it is, obviously a way they could have gone, but there's no way in the world that he was going to be able to carry that belt into a Saudi show, and they have to do 2 a year, and this is the first. So that was a big sticking point for us. And now that we see pictures of him, during Umrah in Mecca, obviously going to be on the show Saturday, that's not an issue anymore, at least right now, because politics be politicking. So now the question is, does that change his trajectory in WWE? Is he somebody that we know that can, lead a singles, title? Is he somebody that we know that he can, because he's over as all hell, and he didn't fall that far, considering where he was in the WrestleMania conversation. So where does he go in the future? And I think it would be interesting for him to be put in the back of that conversation, considering that if this was a hurdle, it's definitely not anymore. So
yeah.
Going into the Saudi show as a champion, facing Roman Reigns, they got to do another one. It's going to be in the fall at some point. Big picture thinking. Call it crazy, but you heard it here first. Does Sami Zayn beat Roman in Saudi Arabia?
Ooh. Down there after SummerSlam and everything. And
I mean, because we got to get through SummerSlam. We got to get through Money in the Bank. We got to get through, the entirety of the summer. But come September, October, whenever they do it, when that lull is between Survivor Series, but before SummerSlam and Survivor Series, they got to go over there again. And it's going to be somewhere around that time. That could be the show. Because Roman's not forever.
Right.
And Sammy's over. He's obviously, puts his faith in a prominent position. If anybody follows him on social media, and he's going to the kingdom. I'm just saying, if there were somebody to beat him, and it's not Mustafa Ali, and unfortunately it's not Mansoor, could it be Sami Zayn? That would. You heard it here first, because you're never going to hear anybody else.
Damian, thoughts?
If we're using that logic, which makes perfect sense in the world, then Sammy's got to pin Roman in Saudi Arabia this weekend.
Yeah.
He's got to be the one to pin Roman in the tag match.
Ooh, that would be a hell of a way to plant the seeds for it.
Bingo.
Because we don't think we don't think that Kevin Owens and Sammy are going to lose.
No, not at all.
Not at all. So now that becomes the question.
Yeah, and that's going to be a news story in itself, because I think a lot of people are assuming the only way Roman ever gets pinned is the day he loses the belts. And I think a lot of people figure, this weekend, we got Solo there. We're going to have the Usos involved in some way. There's ways to get out of this match so all the belts don't go to the tribal chief. But you do make a compelling case that if we're thinking long term, we're thinking to the fall. And Lord knows, I think the key thing here is Sammy now being able to go on these shows, it only helps his case. This does not hurt him in any possible way. This only raises his case even more, and he's still red hot as can be. You know, hell, they main evented night 1 of WrestleMania with the tag titles. You know, a lot of people were thinking that, when he lost in February, that was it. They cut the legs off him, and like, no, he's fine. And Sammy is a guy that's definitely resilient enough, I think, with the fans that it does not take much to get momentum behind him again. And it could be done. It could easily be done. There's no reason I can think of why it couldn't be done. I think the big thing would be, in the meantime, probably what they do is play out everything with the Usos, because that's kind of the wild card now, is how do the Usos and Solo and Roman coexist? And I think that's going to be the story of the summer, is that all playing out. So if they get through all that, you get to October when they make the next Saudi trip, that the timing does line up quite nicely for that early fall time period, that if you want to run back Sammy and Roman, that's a hell of an idea. You might have something here with this.
Now, I also think, and I do you one better, you throw the match out with a disqualification. Okay, fine. So that way, people don't have to wonder about Roman's record, about whether it's singles wins or total wins or whatever. But what you do is you have Sammy pin Roman, but the ref isn't there. Solo knocked him out, or whatever the case may be.
Visual pin.
So that way you have that visual cue. You have it on tape that Roman was down for the 3 count. Sammy pinned him, and obviously it didn't count, and then the match goes on. But now that we know that the seed has been planted, maybe, possibly, that's something they can revisit down the line.
I like it. I think we got to file this one away. We got to file this one away for when we get to the fall, when we see what happens this weekend, to see how they play this out. But Sammy and Roman in the fall in Saudi Arabia, maybe if it happens, where you heard it first. People will be trying to take credit for this one, but it was here on Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. Giant Crab with the crystal ball, possibly. We will see what happens with that. Real quick, I guess, before we move on to the other shows, top of the card, like we said, the other 2/3 of this triple main event, Cody and Brock. We just saw that one. This is kind of like the show of rematches, because he got that, and he also got Asuka and Bianca. But Cody and Brock, which was very short in Puerto Rico due to the bloodshed, I'm almost kind of thinking that's going to be almost a run back of that, where it's just going to be short, violent, explosive. I mean, they are kind of advertising it as a fight as opposed to a match. But I don't know. You think Brock does not get beat much, and he already went down to Cody once. You think they're so into Cody they're going to give him 2 in a row? They're gonna put the American Nightmare over the Beast twice?
No, I don't see it. I think realistically, that's because it's the crowd, and there's a lot of fan service that goes into these international shows. And I think that, yes, the WWE ecosystem is a thing, and Lord knows their fans are just as rabid as anyone else. But that's also why I think, because Brock is a WWE guy, and he's been that guy for a very long time. I just don't see. I don't see this feud ending, which is, I think, most important. They could move on to something else, and they won't. But I also don't think that. I think Brock's going to have to get one back to keep the feud going. So they're going to ride that out until SummerSlam.
Yeah, similar to what they did with him, Brock and Triple H a few years ago, where it was one, then they had the blow-off match. Something's got to carry the summer if Roman's going to be taking time off. So why not run a 3-peat of Brock and Cody, since we did a 3-peat of Cody with Seth? So I don't see the ending anytime soon. They're definitely going to go to maybe like a blood feud, Hell in the Cell, for round 3.
Right.
Something like that. I mean, we have Money in the Bank as the next show, so you never know. They might throw some gimmick match on the undercard there or that or something. Yeah. Who knows? Could be anything. I agree. I think it's going to be another one going on in there. So let's see. Real quick, before we move it on, let's just give our picks real quick, because I know we talked about it weeks ago, but now we know what the match is. We know it's Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles for the title. Who's going away as the first world heavyweight champion? I stand by my original pick. I still think it's Seth Rollins. Damian, you change your mind? Or same with Seth? Nope. Hey, it could be AJ?
If it is, 5%.
All right. Crab, what's your pick?
Rollins, just because I don't like AJ Styles.
All right, we are all going with Seth Rollins as the last guy, as the first new World Heavyweight Champion. So there we go. We'll see what happens Saturday afternoon. I love a daytime wrestling show.
1 p.m. is a good time.
Weekend. That's a great starting time.
Who doesn't love a good brunch wrestling pay-per-view?
Yep. Done before dinner. Got those to get ends by 4. Yeah, not by 4. Usually they're done by 4. Usually they're totally done by 4 o'clock. And it's like got a couple hours before dinner, and it's like it's perfect.
Also, I got one more question about Blood Money. I just want to know one thing. How long does the match between Mustafa and Gunther go? What's the over-under?
I think the over-under is 17.
Minutes? Or seconds?
Long.
Yeah, 17 minutes.
Okay.
I'm calling 5 to 7. I think it's calling
less than 5. It's going to be a Ricochet Brock 2.0 situation.
I know they secretly hate Mustafa Ali.
Correct.
But I do think that there's money to be made by him giving that crowd a show. Again, fan service. He's probably, I hope he comes out in some kind of local garb, maybe something that you would wear, in a abaya or something like that you would wear locally in Saudi Arabia. I really hope that he leans into all of that and gives the people, really that. And for him to do all of that pageantry, and then get squashed by Gunther, it's a very WWE thing to do, to think about it. But I do think that I think they're going to go. I think they're going to go 15.
Hey, that'd be damn fun. Lord knows if anyone can do it, it's those two. So I have no doubt that those two would put on a hell of a match for that amount of time. It's just whether it happens. I don't see every other match. What is everybody over? Is everybody else going over 20?
I hope
no,
not.
Definitely not.
I don't think Natalya and Rhea are going over 9.
No.
So
I don't. Yeah, Becky versus Trish may go 15. I don't think
the tag match will get time because Roman's in it and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn.
Roman started his entrance 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. He's starting to walk to the building right now. Yeah. So he's going to get time. Seth and AJ will get time. Cody and Brock will be short. But yeah, there needs to be something else on this with some time. So
So I mean, unless this pay-per-view is going to be a smooth 2 hours, I think that somebody's got to get 15 to 20 in.
Yeah.
If it's 2 hours, it's right up Will's alley. If it stays at 2 hours.
We're keeping things real short then. I was going to hope for 3. So, hey, we will see Saturday afternoon. All right. We still got some time before halftime. So let's start switching gears here to Sunday. Because Sunday, it's the head-to-head battle, but not really a head-to-head battle. Sure, they're on at the same time. Yes, they're technically head-to-head. But I think hype-wise, one show is clearly a bigger deal than the other. But I think we're also going to talk about that there are some gems on this NXT show that some people might be overlooking as far as what's going down on those. But Sunday, it is AEW Double or Nothing going down in Vegas against NXT's Battleground. Where's Battleground? I think
it's the Vegas of the East, Lowell, Massachusetts.
Lowell, Massachusetts, the building where Shawn Michaels lost his smile. Yes. So there we go. 2 very different shows, 2 very different parts of the country, but NXT and AEW Double or Nothing going down this weekend. I guess where to start with this. Of those 2 shows, I don't know. I think which are you more excited about? Because I think they're both kind of in an odd place for me in that both AEW and NXT haven't exactly been clicking for me lately. They're both missing something to where I haven't had a ton of interest in either one lately. And there's definitely been weeks where I've been like, I'll play PlayStation instead. And I've just straight up not watched their show that week. And it's happened on both Tuesday nights and on Wednesday nights. So in a lot of ways, I'm looking at both those shows and kind of if Sunday night comes around and there's other stuff going on, be the next day's a holiday, I don't know if I'm necessarily sweat watching all of both those shows. I might just catch a little bit here and there, catch a couple matches, but is there one of them you're way more into of the 2 of them? Damian, let's go to you first.
No, I am not interested in any of these. I'm looking at both cards, and none of this makes me want to stay home on Sunday night before a holiday and watch some. Honestly, the only thing I would want to watch from AEW would be the Pillars match, and I know we'll get into that. But looking over at NXT, aside from Hayes versus Breaker, there's nothing here that makes me say, I need to watch this, which is sad because I used to be one of the biggest NXT supporters. I even tried to give 2.0 a chance, but no, if I'm going to watch anything, I'm going to peruse Double or Nothing. But in reality, I'm probably not even going to bother. And I hope the NHL playoffs, are still on at that point so I can watch that instead.
Yeah. I mean, the Sunday night game on ESPN is Philly at Atlanta. So that's probably what I'll be watching on Sunday night, before the holiday starts. But as far as the shows goes, I'm looking at both cards, and I agree that there's nothing that really screams invest in my time.
Right.
Now, of course, we're talking for the pay-per-view. We're talking $50. We're talking for the premium live event. The hassle of signing up for Peacock, which I don't have either. So yes, there are points of interest within. Of course, the Carmelo Hayes coming out party, because what more does he have to do at NXT before he gets elevated to Raw or SmackDown? So this is kind of like, is he just running laps in NXT right now before he gets called up? And that should be sooner than later. For me, the one match that I need to see is Dragunov versus Dijak. I think that could low key steal the show. Both of them have something to prove. It's that match for me as a last man standing match as well. Looks like that could actually burn the goddamn house down. Now on the AEW side, sure, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of hype. The Blackjack Battle Royal will probably have a couple of surprises. Hopefully, you may see a return or two. You may see like a Legends pop that they like the con likes to get. Cool. But none of the matches are particularly spicy for me, and there isn't anything that I would think that's like must watch. Maybe the tag match with Jarrett and Lethal versus FTR. I think that could be a lot of fun. I think Jarrett's doing his best work in a very long time. And of course, you have the posse, his wife and Sanjay and Singh are going to be there, but there isn't anything that I'm thinking that I would rather watch over baseball. But if I got a message from Discord that like the Dijak match was happening right then and there,
right, cool,
I'd join for that match. But as far as Double or Nothing go, it's really going to be like, how do I feel as the pre-show goes, and that's. We'll talk about that feeling after the break, but it's a very interesting state that AEW is in right now, and not in a good or bad way, but just a very interesting state of flux that AEW is in right now.
Yeah, that's what we can do. Let's go to break, reset things, but we got the table set now. You got one show that, of course, is full-on pay-per-view with the $50 price tag and Double or Nothing versus your Peacock premium event where you could just – it's very easy with the Peacock shows to be like, oh, I just want to check out the Dragunov and what's his face, Dijak match. And then be like, when that's done, be like, okay, cool, I'm going to watch baseball now. And you don't feel like, you wasted any money because it's just, it's there. It's there. It's disposable. There's not that level of commitment. So we'll get into that after the break, folks. Thanks for sticking with us on this Thursday night. It's your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back to talk about AEW and NXT right after this.
Are you a fan of all things media? Are you a fan of professional wrestling and sports? Then you need to check out Big Gold Belt Media. We're the ultimate destination for all things entertainment and media, with the latest news, interviews, and analysis from the world of the aforementioned entertainment realm. Our team of dedicated journalists and analysts will bring you exclusive content that you're not going to find anywhere else. And we're not just an online destination. We attend live events, conventions, bringing you behind-the-scenes access and exclusive content that you're not going to find anywhere else. Plus, you can show your support for our brand by subscribing to our Patreon, patreon.com/BigGoldBelt. Join the Big Gold Belt Media community today and stay ahead of the game. Follow all our social media platforms at Big Gold Belt for the latest updates and exclusive content. Whether you're a diehard wrestling, sports, nerd culture fan, or just a casual like some people, Big Gold Belt Media has everything you're going to need to stay informed and entertained. So what are you waiting for? Check us out today at BigGoldBelt.com. That's biggoldbelt.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Thursday night, your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast, breaking down all the stuff that's happening this weekend in wrestling. First half of the show, we already talked about Night of Champions, so that's in the rear view. Moving on now to AEW Double or Nothing and NXT Battleground, which are going head-to-head. But of the two, let's start with AEW, because there's definitely a lot going on there. It's one of their signature pay-per-views where everything got started for them years ago. They're back in Vegas, as they always are for that show. But it's kind of odd, as Jamal talked about before the half, that it feels like there's a lot going on in AEW right now, but it's not necessarily going on at this show. So an interesting situation, but AEW Double or Nothing, what has our attention at it? And then in general, also the question is, this is an odd show. I think that's the kind of the overlying theme is like, a lot of people are talking about AEW right now, but they're not really talking about this show necessarily. And this show is definitely laid out differently than some of their prior shows have been. So Jamal, get in here. We were talking about this before the half, and you had some good points about what's different about Double or Nothing this year.
Well, for me, and you guys watch WWE more than I do, so I'll use this analogy. I can't imagine SummerSlam happening and people looking past SummerSlam to the next Saudi show a month after.
Mm-hmm. True, yeah.
And that's kind of how it feels like, because the elephant in the room is the Forbidden Door. That's what it is. That's coming up in a month from today. And we know what that means for people that follow both AEW and New Japan. Okay, cool. So this kind of does feel like a lame duck experience. Before we even get to Forbidden Door, we have AEW Collision. That's June 17th. That's going to be in Chicago. God only knows what's going to happen. Maybe something, maybe nothing. And then, of course, Dynamite before Forbidden Door is in Chicago. That can mean absolutely nothing, or it can mean everything. But we're already looking a month down the road. And I'm not going to say, and this obviously doesn't feel like a routine episode of Dynamite. It feels like an elevated version of Dynamite, but it doesn't feel like it's worth $50. And that's, of course, the question that we always ask ourselves, because, well, that's the cost of getting into the gate to watch the product. But now more than ever, it really doesn't have that something that I don't know what, that makes you go, this is much watch appointment television. And the bigger question, because it is Memorial Day weekend, and this has kind of been a thing for all of the pay-per-views in AEW, because they did Memorial Day and Labor Day, should this pay-per-view happen next week? And that's, it would be the 2nd or 3rd of June, 4th of June, whatever it is. It's away from Memorial Day, away from the beach season. WWE, if they want to run the pay-per-view or not, they can. UFC is going to do whatever they're going to do anyway. Cool. It's the playoffs are done. It's whatever. It's out of sight, out of mind. It just feels like, the landscape is already crowded. NXT is running at the same time. So if you give me a choice to choose, that's bad for both sides. We're coming off the events of whatever the Saudi show is going to be, which could mean something or nothing. And we're already looking to a Forbidden Door. And to be honest with you, and NXT is in the same boat, but used to it, because NXT is billed as the underdog. It's billed as the show that you don't have to watch, but you're glad it's there. This is not what AEW's show is. This is AEW's signature show. This is their SummerSlam. This is their WrestleMania. This is their one of their top events of the year. And it feels like it's being lost in the shuffle in real time. And out of the 9 matches, and there's going to be more, because I'm sure there's a special surprise on Rampage coming on Friday. Out of the 9 matches, not only do none of them really jump out at me as something that I need to watch, because we're kind of seeing the same pattern from AEW. Good matches on paper, but you have the overhyped gimmick match. Every match is for a title. And then you have the overbooked battle royal. And then whatever they throw on the pre-show. But it feels like the same thing that we've had before. Whereas other issues, and we just said it. When we talked about WWE, we were talking about the possibility of something that we've never seen before. the possibility of Sami Zayn in Saudi Arabia, the possibility of him beating Roman, the possibility of sprinkling the seeds to tell a story over the summer. With AEW, it feels like we're getting a formulaic for what their formula is, but a very by the book, by the numbers, pay-per-view. And that's fine. People like McDonald's. People eat it every day. But I want something more than that. I need this to be bigger than that. And this is the question to you guys. The Four Pillars are leading the show. They're headlining it. And this is the first time that they're doing that. And we've seen AEW bring in all of these veterans, these legends from other companies, people that are arguably 10, 15, 20 years past their prime. But the Four Pillars are headlining the event. What does this say about the Four Pillars that I don't feel, at least I'll speak for myself, that this isn't a marquee show? Are the kids all right? And that's kind of what it is for me right now.
Yeah, I've heard this sentiment a lot, and especially concerning that main event with the Four Pillars. And the biggest issue I keep hearing from people is that they're into the idea of the Four Pillars all having a match, but the timing don't feel right. And the biggest issue for most people seems to be that they don't buy that any of these guys have a chance of beating MJF. So the match feels like it's more of a formality and more of an exhibition as opposed to an actual, these are like the young guys and so this is their chance to make a name. It just feels like a match as opposed to an event is what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Damian, have you been kind of gotten that vibe? That's what I've been getting ever since that match has been announced.
We actually talked about this a couple of weeks back about this show, about it not feeling important because Dynamite had been lackluster for a while up to this point. And this card, just like Jamal was saying, still fits that bill of lackluster, in my opinion. The kids, I don't think, are all right. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I feel MJF's run with the title has been a dud. People have been fighting me on that, but he's not must-see TV. I'm sorry. There's just no reason for me to tune in and watch this. The one thing I'm interested about that match isn't even the match. It's how the schmaz happens. If we get a dusty finish, if we get some sort of double turn, let's say Perry finally turns on everybody else, because we've been kind of leaning toward Jungle Boy potentially turning heel.
I need him to do something.
Because lately, in real life, according to people, he's been kind of a jerk. So he may have to be leaning into his jerkish behavior because he's the son of Luke Perry. He should be acting bigger than thou instead of the plucky baby face. So maybe he aligns himself with Max during this whole thing, does the finger poke of doom with him, lies down for him, beats him with a headlock takeover, what have you. But there is no sizzle at all at this event. I mean, there is a match for literally Ethan Page's services. Like he's a maid. It's like for the contract of Ethan Page's soul. Like, really? I'm supposed to tune in for that? Taya and Jade, they've already wrestled. The oomph is gone from this. And so if Taya wins, then what? Ooh, okay, big deal. And if Jade wins, par for the course. So honestly, I can't pluck down the $50, not like I would. Y'all know me by now. But nothing is must-see TV because even the Anarchy in the Arena match, the roles have flipped because before the Elite were the bad guys and now, and the BCC was the good guys. And now we flipped that around and the Elite's back to being baby faces and BCC is the heels. Seen it before. Don't need to see it again. So I'm going to pass, honestly.
I think the biggest thing, we talked about a little bit about how it feels. I think for me, the biggest thing is who's not involved in a singles match. I'm looking at the participants of the Blackjack Battle Royal, and I'm seeing guys like Orange Cassidy, who is arguably one of AEW's biggest stars. Ricky Starks is one of AEW's biggest stars. The Lucha Brothers. Obviously they have their four pillars, and I don't know how they came up with that. Maybe they took an internet thing and ran with it, and that's where we got it. But I feel like a lot of these guys are getting lost in the shuffle, where we have Like the Ethan Page, and no disrespect to the Guns, they have absolutely taken lemons and making lemonade. They've totally knocked it out of the park as far as what they've been asked to do and superseded that by a mile. Ethan Page and Matt Hardy took a gimmick on a program from Elevation to Dynamite to the pay-per-view. So I respect them for that too. But it should be a pre-show match. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Right. I respect the efforts and I respect the work that they're doing. But this isn't a pay-per-view match. And the fact that it technically is part of the problem. And that's I don't know how AEW gets out of this law, but I think that it's time for, and it sounds like we say it every time, but it's time for some major changes. I want to see Hollywood Jack Perry come out and be a better version of The Miz, instead of MJF being a poor version of The Miz. I want to see, maybe Darby Allin, changes. I don't know what a heel Darby Allin looks like because he just doesn't give a shit. Darby Allin is Orange Cassidy, but, a little bit more nihilistic. And, so I think there needs to be something there. And I don't understand why the Blackpool Combat Club exists. My unbridled hatred of Jon Moxley aside, why do you take 4 singles guys and put them in a boy band just to pair them against the Elite? Make it make sense.
Especially with the fact that the person that brought them together no longer is in the company.
He's gone. So, call it something else. Call it the Suicide Squad. Call it whatever you want. But, and I hate the idea, speaking of ex-WWE guys versus the homegrowns or whatever, stop that. That's been a thing that's been buried to death. This really feels like a lame duck pay-per-view. And I can't imagine saying that about SummerSlam with another Saudi show on the horizon. That sounds insane to me. But yet here we are.
Yeah. I think what's happened in a lot of people's minds is there's been so much focus on Collision and this new Saturday show and what that's going to mean. And if someone's going to return and all this, that everyone's just looking ahead to that and to Forbidden Door. And then, of course, Wembley. All the focus is on this summer. And I think a lot of folks are looking at it as like Collision Door is almost going to be like a reboot. Are they going to split the rosters? Are they going to, do this? Is someone going to return and cause all this drama? And in the meantime, you got this pay-per-view this weekend that's happening pretty much because it was on the schedule. The arena's booked. It's what they've done in the past. But I don't know if anything, maybe this would feel more like something if it felt like it was the closing of a chapter before we got to Collision, where then it's okay, things are going to change. But it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like they're wrapping anything up here. It feels almost like they're doing a show out of the obligation that they have to do a pay-per-view here.
Well, for me, it's because this feels like a very AEW pay-per-view. And that's for me more of an issue than any of the things on the horizon, which is because of this complacency that I seem to see in AEW with its booking kind of makes me want to look forward to something else. And that's kind of what, and that's I hate to compare the two, but just 20 minutes ago, we somehow, just at the spark of an idea, fantasy booked ourselves to the end of the year in WWE in a major way, something unprecedented. So it definitely won't happen. But if it did, you heard it here first. With that said, this feels very formulaic, very by the numbers, and it's a very AEW pay-per-view. There are 9 matches. I guarantee they're going to add 2 more. And then there's the pre-show. And then you have the Sabu's there for some reason. And then you have the gimmick match. And then you have the big tag team matches and the other singles matches. And Anarchy in Arena is the thing. So you have the 2 big gimmick matches, all the championships, the big legends pop. A lot of the feuds are going to be blown off. This is the pay-per-view that they wanted to book.
Yeah, and there will be, and like every AEW show, there'll be fun stuff. There'll be lots of moves. There'll be good wrestling. Yeah. There'll be good energy. But in the big picture, it just feels like this very much feels like a show that once it's over, it's just going to be kind of like, oh, okay, that was cool.
For me, that's not good enough anymore. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking at this, the biggest thing I would want to see is that FTR against Jarrett and Lethal match, mainly because Jeff Jarrett has been entertaining as hell. And how, honestly, that match, there's a good chance I think may have the most heat of the night. Just because Jarrett knows how to work that damn crowd and just get people fired up. Because that main event of MJF and the Pillars, I'm just looking at that like, I think it's just going to be a bunch of moves and a bunch of spots and just kind of like, unless there's some big twist in it, it just seems like, it almost seems like it's going to be like white noise. You know, it doesn't feel like there's no, as Damien said, there's no sizzle to it.
Yeah,
there's no stakes.
It's very formulaic.
And it's a world title match, for God's sake. But it feels like it's an exhibition match.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there are stakes. The 4-way for the world title, the tag team title, the ladder match for the championship with Wardlow and Christian Cage. You have the Jade's undefeated streak is on the line. There's a lot of things that can happen, and of course, we have returns. The question I have is, now we've seen, because they're going up against NXT, and that is the thing that's happening. WWE is doing their big pay-per-view the night before. Would it be petty of AEW to run an ROH pay-per-view? Let's say, what's the next SummerSlam weekend?
Mm-hmm.
We revisit this. We have an AEW, major event on a Saturday, because there will be a Saturday show. Maybe there is a 2-hour long collision during the next NXT pay-per-view. Maybe there is a special Sunday show on TNT during SummerSlam. Is it too much of a good thing that we're getting right now? Because we're getting, and even though we just spent 20 minutes dumping on AEW, we are getting a quality pay-per-view product. We're getting 3 of them. It may not be, everything may not be for you, but there is something for everyone this weekend. And there's progress this weekend, and New Japan's tag tournament going on this weekend. Is it too much of a good thing when you have these things weekend so stacked on top of what you could have going on because it is Memorial Day? God only knows what they're going to do 4th of July, because New Japan's coming to America.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it like this. Wrestling has never been more accessible and at your fingertips. And as we've also said a lot of times in this show, great wrestling isn't so much of a draw anymore, I think, because on any damn show, you're going to see good wrestling these days. Problem with all that, I think, now becomes, because there's so much of it, it's absolutely disposable. If you miss something, there's something coming right around the corner. If you just saw something, you don't have the time to focus on it and really let it sink in, because there's always more coming right behind it. It's a nonstop flow. And since it's always there and it's always high quality, it's in one ear, out the other. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So let me ask you this on the back of that. So Conan said on one of his mini podcasts that it's a head scratcher, and this is a quote, that Tony Khan has yet to learn how to elevate talent. Now, we just talked, that's a very good point about how the market's arguably oversaturated, and how everything kind of looks the same because high quality wrestling is still high quality. But if it's all high quality, then it's not high quality, because there's no way to differentiate between good and bad and great. So is it the fact that the market's oversaturated and that everything kind of looks the same? Because you can watch NXT and see the young guys do their thing. AEW is leaning on their young guys that's close to pay-per-view, and WWE is doing their thing also with this premium live event in Saudi Arabia. There's so much high quality. Everybody's putting their best foot forward at the same time. Does that kind of addition by subtraction, so to speak, kind of water down the rest of the product, and by comparison, make things look inferior? Because if AEW were only happening this weekend, maybe by itself, it may be a better pay-per-view. But since I have the opportunity to choose between the holiday and baseball and 2 other high-quality events in America, let alone the other things you can watch around the world, it does get lost in the shuffle and diminished by comparison. So is it to the point that Conan's right, that Khan isn't actively elevating talent, which there is a case for that? Or is it the fact that it has been elevated, but so has everything else? And if everybody's moving forward at the same time, nobody's actually moving forward at all.
Damien, you give some thoughts in here on this.
So I actually like the second part, and I actually agree with the second part of Crab's statement, because competition will make everybody get better, right? Mm-hmm. And I honestly feel that because NXT has gotten progressively better, according to some people, and WWE programming has become a little bit more watchable for some people, AEW doesn't make any leap and bounds forward in terms of progression. We've talked about it numerous times that this is AEW in general would be a dream indie show anywhere in the world, right? Before we get into the pomp and circumstance of it all. Tony's not a wrestling guy. He's a booker, he's an owner, but in terms of just knowing the game, knowing the business, when to elevate someone versus not, just feeding off the energy of a crowd. He doesn't have that. And I
Nightingale.
Ricky Stark.
And she did that on her own. Let's be honest.
Willow and Ricky.
She did that on
1
her
and
own.
2.
Hell, even Athena. She turned a bad gimmick into a good gimmick. I was there in Toronto. I saw that match with Jody Threat.
Yeah.
And she turned that on her own into the gimmick that you see today. And she's been kicking ass ever since.
Correct. And also, people have been asking, Jamie Hayter's been elevated by Tony. I said, no, Jamie Hayter got that on her own when people started realizing that, oh shit, she hits hard and she can beat the crap out of anyone in the division. That makes her must watch. I'm willing to actually say that if we didn't have so much wrestling this weekend, AEW would have a bigger target on its back or chest because they would be the only game in town for the weekend, with the flaws being picked at a little bit more intensely than what we're doing now, because now we're focused over here on NXT, we're focused here on Blood Money, but we're not even paying attention really to AEW. But if WWE wasn't putting on these shows this weekend, I'd feel a lot more worried for AEW's long-term product, because we'd be talking a lot more about it standing on an island by itself.
Well, I would say the flip side of that could also possibly be true, because now that I have an opportunity to watch the product more, I may actually like it more. I may actually become more engaged in the product versus splitting my time in all of these different avenues that, and of course, you could say that every weekend. There's always something else to watch. But it's still to the point of everybody's putting their best foot forward this weekend. Not the weekend before, not the weekend after. It's this weekend. There's 2 pay-per-views and an NXT takeover, if we wanted to throw it back to 2014. That's happening this weekend. Mm-hmm. And I do think that if AEW were in maybe 2006 and that lull that WWE had between like 2004 and 2010, where it just kind of ruled the roost. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, but it was definitely there. That's a different conversation about what the product would be, because AEW would be radically different from WWE now.
Right. It would be a true alternative.
It would be a true alternative. But now that AEW has hit the ceiling and continues to bump their head against the ceiling of what their scope is, they have to become more centrist, which means they're going to emulate WWE a lot more, because that's where the culture is in North American wrestling. I understand that. I don't like it, but I get it. Money. So now that we have AEW where they are, how do they pivot out of this thing to separate themselves and reposition themselves as a true alternative to WWE again? Because I think as the pendulum has swung back to a more centrist WWE style, they've kind of got to pivot away from that again. And I don't know where you do that on Dynamite, and Ring of Honor still behind the paywall. So I think all of those factors contribute into the fact that this show, and none of us have said that this show looks bad.
No.
It just doesn't look good enough to justify the effort to watch it on top of other things. You gave us a choice. We're going to choose. And some of us may choose AEW, and some of us may choose literally everything else. So that's it's a good position to have, but it's arguably too much of a good thing.
Right.
Because, that's what it is. It's an interesting position to be in. I never thought that we would be saying this, where it's just like, there's just so much good wrestling out there, damn it. One of y'all suck.
Right. Well, that's just it. It's harder to be an alternative when the stuff you're trying to be an alternative to is clicking. And it's a hot product, and it's like, because how can you promote demonstrate being an alternative in a positive way when you can't be like, well, look, this stuff over here is stale. When it's like, I don't know, man, they're filling buildings, and they got big reactions, and the matches are good, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a different landscape from pre-pandemic, where it was like WWE was going through the motions. And AEW came along and was like a fresh, hot new product. And now it's like, okay, y'all been doing this now a good 4 years.
Yeah.
It's a different playing field now. The landscape has changed. But
if you're a baseball fan, this is what I would like to say that AEW is going through the second time through the lineup. We kind of they've had their first at bat and it was a surprise. Okay, cool. Now that we've seen them and now that we're used to them, now that we know what it is, how does that look a second time around? And I think in 4 years, we kind of know what we're getting from them. It's really hard to surprise us anymore. And you either like what you're being served or you don't. Right. But the long and short of it is that for me, it's going to be a little bit hard. They're going to have to come a lot harder than they are to get me to get reinvested, reinvigorated. Please come back to my town. I'll see you guys in June. But as far as a week to week, I'm going to need to see them pivot almost immediately, and it will be interesting to see if they do that at the pay-per-view or not.
Yeah, and as we kind of got teased today at the press conference, though, it seemed like there was a lot of questions that Tony Khan was kind of sidestepping, kind of punting down the road. People asking about brand splits, people asking about, of course, what changes were possibly coming with the new show, and he definitely mentioned a few times, well, first we got to get through Double or Nothing, and we'll see what happens after that. I'll have stuff to talk about after Double or Nothing. So hopefully there's stuff in the pipeline that is about to happen to spice things up, because there's definitely stuff to work with. It's just a matter of what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, and how do we get there from here? We got a few minutes left. Do we want to talk about the latest about Fight Forever? Because that game threw up some pictures this week with people concerned about. Here's what jumped out at me. They threw up those pictures talking about, okay, it's coming out at the end of June. And people thought maybe because we were going for the teen rating that we had to take out blood. No, here's some pictures of a super bloody looking level that looks totally like something out of Mortal Kombat. And I was just kind of like, what on earth is going on here?
I honestly thought because of how the blood looked, it looked like Splatoon. It was just like
cartoonish.
Yeah, yes. It was just like individual splotches of blood laid on top of each other, like a whippet. But it's that was a bit weird. And I did see the live stream on Twitch where Uno and Orange Cassidy were playing the versions of the game that they were allowed to show. And yes, it immediately took me back to 1996-97 to No Mercy with the Rumble Pack. And that's not a bad thing. I obviously need to see more of it and how it looks in real time. I need to see other people's experiences on it. It's going to be the game, because the biggest question for me is it worth $60? Right. To me, it looks like it's worth $40. I would absolutely pay $40 for that game.
That's right.
So that could be the difference between me getting it on Black Friday and me getting it and me pre-ordering it. More importantly, I'm not seeing any pre-order bonuses, and the pre-orders are available right now for whatever system you want it on, but I'm not seeing any pre-order bonus. So why do I pick this up right now when I can wait?
Mark my words right now, with it coming out the end of June, Black Friday, that game is going to be $30 or $30 or
less.
Yeah. And that's when to pick it up.
That's exactly what I'm going to pick it up.
I want it to come out. I want to hear about it. I want like the bugs worked out in it.
Yep.
And that's my thinking. And hell, because personally for me, June's going to be all about Street Fighter 6. So Fight Forever is going to wait when that drops next weekend. So
what if this tanks? What if the game tanks with all these delays, all this pushback? All you saw for a while, I think Crab said it was Kenny's nipple and Darby Allin for a long time. What if it tanks?
Well, I mean, even if it does, let's say that it absolutely tanks and nobody buys it and all the reviews are trash, and IGN actually comes out and takes a stance and hates the game.
Go.
Well, we saw that happen with 2K20. Remember how 2K20 bombed completely?
Well, 2K20 bombed because it was physically unplayable.
Right.
And that was the problem. It wasn't that it was a bad game. It was because it was a bad game. It was a bad game because it was a buggy mess that wasn't worth a dime, let alone $70.
Right.
Now, and the same thing with NBA Live that they had to cancel. Same thing with Cyberpunk, which they had to figure out and issue returns and refunds. So it would have to be that bad for it to be awful. And because the people's attention spans are so short, even if it's not the game that you thought it was, because people are thinking that it's going to be 2K when it's clearly not. But then again, the target audience never played No Mercy. I mean, you got to think that
generations ago.
that was a millennia ago. So you have these kids that are, I would say that nobody under 25 understands what it's like to have 4 simultaneous controllers connected to a 64 and a box of Papa John's pizza or Lito's pizzas if you're here in this area.
There you go.
And a big ass 2-liter Pepsi. You weren't there. You don't know. And it's a generational thing. For No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, WCW Revenge. Will this thing bring back those memories? Yes. But the people that they're going to bring back those memories for are pushing 40. So the target audience, which is the 18 to 25 group, are going to really have to do the research to understand why this game engine is such a big deal. Not listen to their uncles or us, our old asses, tell you that back in our day on the CRT television, with so many lines of resolution, it was great. Rumble Pack, you see, that was the biggest thing.
You lost people at CRT.
Right.
You had to do printouts to figure out how to make wrestlers.
Facts.
You had to make it a formula. You had to print out the formula to make people.
Have you heard of the Game Genie, son? The kids don't know.
Oh, man.
And that's going to be the thing. And I think the biggest thing for that game is going to be the online play, too. How will it be in a 8-person match or whatever? Will it be a buggy online mess? The creation suite and all the things that we want in the game that we haven't seen yet. So for right now, solid $40. Is it worth $70? We'll have to see when the review companies come out. And AEW, we play games too. So let us review it.
Get with 2 Chainz on that when he's on the media call today, asking questions. That's what we got to see about review copies of Fight Forever. Would be very interesting to see.
We'll have to play that.
There you go. PS5 folks here. So, hey, come on. We can get in on that. Yeah, actually, deal. There we go. All right. Another week, another Thursday. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast is here each and every week, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all your social media platforms. The podcast version drops the next morning, Fridays around 10 a.m. on all your podcast platforms. So if you want the audio version in your ears or you want to be able to follow along on video, we got you covered in both formats. As we talked about tonight, folks, there is a lot of wrestling to watch this weekend. So buckle in, check out some stuff. We'll be back here next Thursday night at 8 p.m. to break it down and talk about all of it and whatever's going on as we head into June. For Will, Damian, and the giant crab Jamal, it's your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next week.
All I really need, that big